Good morning, Jackie. All right. So I just put out this training pretty last minute. So I'm going to give people a few minutes. I'm getting quite a few questions that have come in, people who are just wanting the replay because they're not able to attend. So we'll give it a few minutes and then dive right in because I'd like to address a lot of things in a small amount of time and hopefully leave a little bit of room for questions and Q&A at the end as well. So if there's any questions that people have along the way, let me know. I'm happy to share them. So you can send them in a direct message and I'll try to get those into the conversation. But we'll leave a little bit of time at the end as well. So the reason this topic has come up, obviously it is in popular media. I just recently watched the Oprah special on shame, blame, and weight loss. It was produced by one of my friends. And as I was watching it, and as I'm watching kind of what I'm seeing with my client population, working alongside a couple of doctors locally to figure out what is the best way to support people in achieving and maintaining healthy weight. So this is for you, whether you have used a weight loss drug, are curious about it, or are transitioning off, or just want to learn some tips and tricks about how to naturally use these different hormones that impact weight to achieve and maintain healthy weight loss. Or if you've gone through weight loss, you know kind of the roller coaster that you're on. And so hopefully you'll get a few nuggets of information. And as I mentioned, this is equally important for anyone who just wants to maintain a healthy weight naturally, to transition off, or any of the above. It really impacts all of us because we have all of these hormones that we'll discuss today, including GLP-1. So first of all, what is GLP-1? When it comes to understanding that, I think that's one of the most important things, is just to kind of know, what is that even? And I hope one of the things too that you come away from, if nothing else, is really, and the message that I share all the time, is just to trust your gut, right? If you feel like something is off, something is imbalanced in your body, whether it's your gut, your weight, your hormones, your mood, trust your gut, keep asking questions. And so in terms of what we're talking about with GLP-1s, that's kind of my disclaimer, and I'm not a prescriber. So what I'm sharing is more the clinical insights, the research, what I'm seeing on the other end as a functional medicine nutritionist, helping people to lose weight healthily or to get off. All right. So the next one is, I just wanted to first make sure everyone knows what functional medicine is, because that's the perspective I'm coming from. So basically, I'm going to be going through from an approach of treating the whole person as an interconnected being. And that's, at the end of the day, what functional medicine is. It treats the whole person as an interconnected being. And so we're treating all aspects of it. We're not just focusing on one hunger hormone. We're not just focusing on what you're eating or how you're sleeping or stress management. It really all comes together. We can't pull one aspect out and expect to have a healthy, vibrant, energetic whole person. So that's the perspective that I'm coming from. And at the end of the day, that's what functional medicine is, root cause medicine. Now, quick look at all of the hormones that come together when we're talking about healthy weight. These are all the hormones that come together to play a role in our hunger and what balances our hunger. So as you'll see, sex hormones play a role, blood sugar and insulin. We'll be focusing more today on GLP-1, leptin, and ghrelin, kind of those hunger satiety hormones. Tomorrow, we're going to be digging in a little bit more on cortisol and insulin. And then next week, we're going to be diving into thyroid. These are all things that I see in my practice that women struggle with, that keep them from looking and feeling their best. So quick overview of all of that. Now, what is GLP-1? I guess let's start there, because it's a term that's thrown around so much. And it's a hormone that's released by our gut and by our brain. And so within minutes of eating. And it's really important in metabolism, in inhibiting appetite, and that's what it's used for as a drug. But also it's naturally released by our gut and by our brain and by our pancreas. So it stimulates insulin production, lowers systemic inflammation, and these are all key factors. Drugs like Ozempic actually mimic what's naturally produced when we eat. So they were approved as a diabetes drug. So at the end of the day, I hear both sides. I hear people get very riled up and doctors get really frustrated by these drugs. But at the end of the day, if we can lower blood sugar and whether it's naturally or through a drug temporarily, that can be a great bridge. So obviously it's a signaling hormone. And so macrodosing with high doses can obviously make you feel terrible. And that's where some of these side effects come in and where the benefits of some of these natural solutions might win out. There's also talk about having a crisis of low GLP-1. And so what is it about our bodies and our biology that's driving us to overeat, to overconsume, and really drive this obesity crisis? I mean, we'll explore that today. There's a lot of factors at play, but it's really common in people with any kind of insulin or blood sugar issues, with non-alcoholic fatty liver or fatty liver disease, which is actually a precursor to heart disease, cancer, diabetes. I mean, 80 million Americans are affected, and I see it regularly in my practice, even people who don't drink alcohol. So there's a lot of factors at play here. Now, so this is how it works. So GLP-1, as I just mentioned, it stimulates insulin production in order to lower blood sugar. It slows your digestion and motility. So that's one of the things, that's why it works, because it slows your motility. And it slows that down to the point where you don't feel hungry for a long time. But on the other side of things, it's impairing nutrient absorption. Your food that you do eat is sitting in your stomach and your intestines longer than it should, and it can begin to ferment. And that's where I suspect we're going to see more digestive issues in the future, like SIBO, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, where things start to back up into the small intestine where it should be in the colon and cause all kinds of GI issues long term. I mean, I have a client who works for the company that produces Miralax, and she's like, sales are off the charts because all these people taking these weight loss drugs, they're constipated. So that's a factor. And then it binds to our nerve cells in our brain. So it actually works on our brain because that's where a lot of our hunger and satiety hormones, this sensation of fullness, is coming from. So let's start with number one. I mean, in terms of what's really important to consider for healthy weight, and whether you're doing it naturally or transitioning off, gut health is where it all begins. So this is the seat of our inflammation in our gut, in our brain systemically. It's where we absorb nutrients. It's where we produce vitamins and nutrients. It directly impacts our mood. About 95% of our neurotransmitters actually are produced in the gut and not the brain. And so when we have any kind of gut imbalances, that's going to be a major factor. It impacts blood sugar. It impacts our weight. I look at stool testing all the time, and I can see when people have certain bacteria profiles that they're actually going to be gaining weight from the exact same amount of food. Those bacteria harvest more food. So the most important thing you can do is just eat a wide variety of colorful, vibrantly colored different plants and a wide variety of food in general. The variety and rotation is the key. Now, the next one is hydration. And dehydration is something that I not only see in people coming off of these weight loss drugs, but just women in general. And myself included, I'm carrying around a water bottle constantly, and my blood work is always showing that I'm sort of on the edge of dehydration. And there's a lot of factors at play. Now, we need to make sure that we're not only drinking enough water, but sometimes it takes a little extra boost, like a medical grade electrolyte, to get that hydration across the cell membrane to make sure that our gut, our cells, our brain is all hydrated. Now, dehydration is something that is a serious risk for people who are on these drugs, especially. And that's above and beyond just our natural state um, of a lot of people are just walking around naturally dehydrated. So blood pressure, heart rate, chronic infections, dehydration leads to leaky gut, which is the gateway to systemic inflammation. It's the gateway to food sensitivities, and it can worsen the GI side effects. You all know that that these drugs like Ozempic are really strongly associated with, because we're pumping them into people, GLP-1s at a macro supraphysiological dose, way too high than our body would naturally produce. It can make a lot of people feel pretty sick, nauseous, vomiting, constipation, all kinds of symptoms that we're still kind of understanding what the long-term ramifications are. Now, here's one that's a little bit outside the box, and one that, as I mentioned, our genes don't change. So even if there is a genetic component to if someone has naturally low GLP-1, we still don't know, is that genetic or is it a result of diet and lifestyle? But either way, our genes don't change, our environment changes. So this is something we really need to drill in on, and a lot of people don't realize. It's the things that we are exposed to in our air, our water, our food, our skincare, our home cleaning products. There is a whole classification of chemicals and toxins known as obesogens, and they are exactly what they sound like. They mess with your hormones, they cause hormone imbalances, and they actually cause your body to hold on to weight and to store fat. And so these are things that we need to look at reducing in our lives. And so exploring, how do we implement an overall nutrition and lifestyle plan that leverages our detox pathways, our GLP-1, and really avoids these consequences. Now, this environment that we've created of really where pharmaceuticals profit, this leads standard of care. And so in the process, we're getting exposed to all these cellular poisons that actually damage our metabolism, brains, hormones, guts. And so there are massive metabolic ramifications and health ramifications to this. So anything we can do to identify toxic exposures, reduce toxic burden and obesogens and, things like that. Because if we don't, at the end of the day, address the root cause, or likely the root causes of any kind of weight imbalance, inflammatory imbalance, immune imbalance, we're just going to continue to rack up other diseases with or without weight loss drugs. So here are some of the top obesogens to avoid. Now, phthalates are, think about anything, this is probably offender number one when it comes to obesogens. And that is really all scented products. And so anytime you see artificial scents in detergents, perfumes, candles, air fresheners, stay away from that. That's probably that's at the top of the list. And so just switch to unscented or naturally scented with essential oils, and you'll be far better off. Now, pesticides and herbicides are, it's hard to avoid those, but if you can buy more organic food, that's going to reduce your overall toxic burden and your risk for gaining and holding on to weight simply because of what you're being exposed to. Now, if you can buy more organic, that's always the best in terms of your produce, but also looking at more grass-fed wild-caught meats. Environmental Working Group, EWG.org, puts out a list every year, the Dirty Dozen and Clean 15. So if you aren't able to buy all organic, it at least shows you what are the 12 most pesticide-laden products to avoid. And that's where you should prioritize organic. And then plastics and BPAs, anything that you can do to reduce exposure to BPA. And unfortunately, this also includes BPA-free. The thing about BPA, BPS, BPF, the BPA-free products is they're just not well researched yet. And the research that's coming out is indicating that they're actually worse than BPA. So if you can just switch from plastic to reusable bottles, or to glass, or Look for, if you're buying, beans or tomatoes, look for a box instead of a can. The can lining has that. Buy wild caught salmon instead of farm raised, because that's really high in BPA. And don't touch receipt paper. That ink goes directly into your bloodstream. So that is something that's going to be obesogenic, but also throw off any hormone imbalances. And then finally, PFOAs. Those are known as forever chemicals, things like Teflon, nonstick pans. It's in certain clothing that's like sweat wicking clothing. It gets mixed in with BPA. It gets mixed in with the grains that grain-fed animals eat. And so it's exactly like it sounds. Our bodies can't detoxify them, and it hangs around doing genetic damage for decades. So the more you can just avoid and reduce these and just support your overall health, the better. All right, so the next thing on the list is protein and nutrient-dense foods. And obviously food first. As a functional medicine nutritionist, this is priority number one. And so I always like to start here in terms of just getting enough, especially when it comes to losing weight, whether you're on a weight loss drug or cutting calories or just looking to have a healthier, leaner physique. One of the most important things you can do is to eat more protein. And that's something that's really tough for women to do, most women to do. The goal is 1 gram per ideal pound of body weight. And if you aren't tracking it, I can pretty much guarantee you're not meeting the protein intake requirements. But if you are, you'll start to realize, wow, it's really important to prioritize protein, not only for body composition, but protein is one of the things that triggers that satiety hormone. It's going to keep your blood sugar stable. So if you can eat it 30 to 40 grams per meal is the goal, maybe 15 grams in a snack. And front loading protein goes a long way too, especially if you can get more protein in the first part of the day, the first part of the meal. That is ideal for keeping your blood sugar stable throughout the rest of the day. And that's really what will send your hunger and satiety hormones and your insulin fat storage hormones on a wild roller coaster ride and just throw off any chance of success. Now, adipose tissue, our fat tissue, actually produces its own inflammation and its own ghrelin, hunger hormones, these food-seeking hormones. And so if we're eating protein and prioritizing protein, then we're less likely to eat more processed carbohydrate, sugar, have more satiety, and feel more stable. And it's going to make life a whole lot easier. Now, the other aspect of this is strength training, protein, fat, and fiber, that combination, a little bit lower carbohydrate or especially lower processed carbohydrate are all things that are going to sort of retrain your body to be more resilient and more metabolically flexible as you start to work things, change other aspects. And then in terms of nutrient-dense foods, here are a few of my favorite. Think about, like I said, with the gut health, number one, eating the rainbow, because every single color in the rainbow, every pigment, especially if you can find a deep blue, purple pigmented foods, every one contains different antioxidants, and it's going to calm that inflammation. It's going to feed different healthy gut bacteria. That's going to different fibers that bind different toxins to get them removed from your body. So these are just a few on the list that rose to the top. But again, variety and rotation is always the key. Now, exercise and physical activity, here's the thing. You have to exercise. It's just a huge disaster if you are trying to lose weight naturally or going on a calorie restricted diet or going on a GLP-1. If you don't exercise 4 to 5 times a week, and especially if you're not prioritizing strength training, removing processed foods, increasing protein, and only take the drug, that's where I've been brought in by a couple of local doctors to help people transition off, because you have to make these lifestyle changes in order to maintain any change, any weight loss that you have occurred. So Ozempic, for example, it could be a great Band-Aid or a great bridge, especially if someone has blood sugar issues. but possibly it could be just more of a distraction or a Band-Aid cure. So, and especially when people are spending 1,500 plus a month, you just have to wonder what else could we be doing and what other changes could we be investing in our health and our lives and our environment to set us up for success in the long term instead of just focusing on the short term loss, which I totally get it. We all love a little bit of instant gratification, right? But it says right there on the box, you will gain all the weight back when you go off. Now, here's the problem and the reason that the last two are so important: protein and exercise. Because a lot of the weight that people are losing, the weight, if you're just looking at the scale, a lot of the weight that people are losing is actually protein. Now, these drugs have a massive appetite for protein and amino acids. So we need to eat even more protein. It's breaking down our muscles if it needs that. It's breaking down our muscles also if we need more minerals and things that get stored in our muscles if our adrenals are stressed or if we're not getting enough nutrients. And then it also goes after essential fats before it goes after the fat that we actually want to lose in our belly and on our hips. And so you may have noticed it goes after the fat around our vital organs, around our brain. Some people, you start to see it's called Ozempic face because it goes after the fat pads that give your face structure, and then they'll start to get kind of gaunt and have lots of extra wrinkles before it ever starts to go after the essential fat. And then a lot of the weight that's lost is actually muscle and essential fat. And so after they go off, if they haven't changed anything, the weight that's gained back is primarily fat. And then you're setting yourself up long term for more blood sugar issues, more inflammation, a worse shape because muscle takes up less space. It gives you that nice, lean, toned look that you're going for. Because at the end of the day, most of the women that I work with, they're not just going for skinny. They want to be strong and healthy and feel strong and healthy now and then going into the rest of our lives and have strong, healthy muscle, bones, energy. And so when we've lost muscle, and as women, every decade, it gets harder and harder to even maintain the muscle that we have. So that can be a huge detriment to metabolic health and future weight loss and blood sugar issues. All right. So the other thing about exercise is that it is such an important mood booster. It gives us these dopamine hits, right? And I think that's one thing that a lot of us need to look at, especially if we are doing a lot of, binge eating or, eating a lot of high carb or comfort foods is it hunger? And we just need to sit with that and explore. Is it hunger? Is it boredom? Is it we need a dopamine hit? We need a state change. And so just thinking about ways to movement is just a panacea. If we could put it into a pill, it would be a magic cure-all for so many things, from weight to anxiety and depression. And so one of the things that you can do, as I mentioned, is it's really important to be exercising and moving 4 to 5 times a week, and building in a weight loss or a weightlifting plan into your week, full body weights, about at least 2 to 3 times a week. And then sleep, maybe a less sexy thing to talk about, but it really is absolutely foundational. If we don't get 7 to 8 hours of sleep, we are immediately insulin resistant the next day. And so we have higher cortisol, we have higher cravings, and we eat about 22% more calories. And so if we're looking at balancing all of these hormones, we're going to have less response to those GLP-1 products or foods or exercise, things that stimulate GLP-1. So getting at least not just time in bed, but good, deep quality sleep, 7 to 8 hours. It's what it takes to turn on our brain's lymphatic detox system. It's what it takes to not be insulin resistant. And then when we haven't slept, we eat very well. We tend to eat about 22% more calories the next day. Most of the time it's like not broccoli, right? It's comfort food. It's high processed or carbohydrate foods. So prioritize sleep, move up your bedtime just a little bit and cool off the room, turn off your blue lights at least an hour before bed, stop eating at least an hour before bed, all things that you can do to make sure that you are getting good quality sleep. Now, this one cracked me up. One of my clients sent it to me and she was like, this is how I feel when one of my colleagues, I have to repeat myself over and over when I've clearly laid it out in an email. And the thing about that is when you feel that stress, that rush of adrenaline, that is cortisol. That is the stress hormone that drives up our hunger hormones, our blood sugar, causes leaky gut, intestinal permeability, increases anxiety and depression. So one of the things that you can do is just to not necessarily, we're never going to have no stress, but it's really about recognizing it when it happens. And especially for women over 35, as our hormones start to wind down into retirement, our baseline cortisol, our adrenals step in and take over. And so our baseline cortisol is going to be even higher. That's where we have about 400% more cortisol receptors on our belly than anywhere else. And that's where stress belly is a real thing. That's where it will go and get stored. So move your body, take a couple deep breaths, go for a quick walk when you feel that rush of stress. It's something that will make a huge impact in the long run. And then finally, social connections. It's so important. The Mayo Clinic did a study that, obviously you talk about we're the average of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. But when Mayo Clinic did a study and kind of looked at this in statistical terms, they found that if people their close friends become overweight or obese, they're 57% more likely to become overweight and obese. With mental health, it's even more. If their friend becomes depressed, or they're 93% more likely to experience depression. And so setting ourselves up in an environment where we are set up to win and to not have to overcome temptation at every turn because we have a limited ability to do that. Surround yourself with people and set your environment up for success. So ask a couple of people to support you in these lifestyle changes. Get out and exercise together in nature if possible, and you'll multiply those benefits. You'll multiply your potential of being successful in the long term. And then wanted to touch on just a couple of other ways to stimulate these key hunger and satiety hormones. Now, GLP-1, as I mentioned, it's one of the things that protein is going to increase. Antioxidants, think colorful, vibrantly colored veggies, fruits, herbs, spices, nuts, and seeds, leafy greens, whey. So things like cottage cheese or whey protein if you tolerate dairy. Probiotics, I know Pendulum Life has one that we know specifically increases GLP-1 and Akkermansia. Butyrate, that is that's what's made when you eat fiber and resistant starch, and berberine, which has a powerful impact on blood sugar and GLP-1. Leptin is our satiety hormone. So when we're thinking about lowering sugar intake, increasing fiber, exercise, protein, and sleep, that is going to help us to have more of the satiety hormones that get naturally produced. And then finally, ghrelin, our hunger hormones, the ones that send us out seeking chocolate in the middle of the night. I don't know if that's ever happened to anyone else but me, but those food-seeking hormones, ghrelin. So those are quenched by healthy fats. So think fish oils and fatty cold water fish. Think raw nuts and seeds, olives, avocados. The more we can get some of those healthy fats in our diet, that is going to calm that food-seeking hormone. More protein and less sugar. You're starting to see a trend here. So more protein, less sugar and processed carbohydrates, more just going 12 hours overnight without eating to let your body reset, and then keeping your blood sugar stable throughout the day, increasing protein, making sure you're really well hydrated, And those are all things that are going to set you up for success in the long term. So I hope you got a few nuggets out of this. And then if you are interested in more, you can go to vibrantvia.com/hormone harmony for more information. I did put together a free PDF at vibrantvia.com/bellyfat that lays out a lot of tips and tricks, pretty comprehensive lists of things. And then you'll be able to download that for free. And if you have any questions, any other questions, I guess, while we have a couple of minutes left. Absolutely. Thank you for chiming in, Jackie. And thank you for being here. And if you guys have any other questions, let me know. Feel free to send those, and I'm happy to get those answered. Hope you have a great day.